He walked into a diner for coffee, but froze when he saw a waitress with 3 little girls who looked exactly like him. Was it a cruel joke, a hidden betrayal, or something far more life-altering? One glance shattered his world, because one of them just called him Daddy. Before we dive into this unforgettable journey, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? If stories about love, sacrifice, and second chances speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we're bringing you another powerful story you won't want to miss. Jules Rivera moved like poetry behind the counter of the dusty roadside diner, her hair pulled into a low bun, strands escaping to frame a face too young to carry so much exhaustion. The bell above the door jingled for the 5th time that morning, but she didn't flinch. She was already balancing 3 plates in one hand and refilling a coffee mug in the other. Her voice was soft but firm, guiding her twin daughters through the crowded kitchen doorway. Bella, Grace, Lila, no running, baby girls, stay close. 3 identical 6-year-olds followed her in single file, each wearing mismatched socks and ponytails that bounced as they walked. Their laughter was gentle and contagious, cutting through the clatter of cutlery and the drone of old country songs playing from a dusty speaker in the corner. Bella grabbed a crayon from the counter, Grace reached for a napkin to draw on, and Lila clung to her mom's apron, humming. To strangers, they looked like a miracle. Triplets with wide hazel eyes, soft curls, and a quiet energy that turned heads wherever they went. But to Juliana, they were her reason to wake up, the anchors that had kept her steady through storms no one else could see. She kissed each of them on the forehead and returned to pouring coffee for the regulars, unaware that fate had just taken a sharp left turn toward their sleepy little town. The glass door to the diners swung open again. This time, it wasn't a trucker or a local farmer looking for eggs and hash. The man who entered wore a navy wool coat despite the heat. His collar popped high and his stride controlled, crisp. Ethan Westwood was a man built by walls, emotional ones, corporate ones, and those made of glass and steel in the cities he dominated. He was 36, yet something in his demeanor suggested he had aged far beyond his years. His dark eyes swept the room like a security scan, cold and efficient. He wasn't supposed to be here. His car had taken a detour after a private jet emergency landing, and he'd decided to drive the last hour alone. Just him, the winding roads, and an expensive silence. He hated small towns, hated diners, hated unexpected delays. But hunger and curiosity had brought him to the faded blue and white building with peeling paint and a chalkboard sign that read, "Homemade pie, half off if you smile." He stepped in, intending to grab a coffee and leave. He never made it to the counter. Across the room, seated at a sticky booth near the window, 3 little girls were coloring quietly. Their voices were soft, melodic even, and their faces, God, their faces. Ethan froze mid-step, his chest constricted, his eyes widened. They looked like him. Not kind of, not vaguely, not in a could-be-a-coincidence way. It's exactly like him. His jaw tightened, hands balling into fists inside his coat pockets, as his brain scrambled to make sense of it. He stared, unable to move, as if the air itself had turned to concrete. His throat dried out. The girls laughed about the table as they went, a habit he Jove had actually formed. His grasp of the idea of a drop with a chef's hat. And then one of them turned her head fully toward him. She blinked, a pause. Her smile widened. She waved. The other 2 followed suit, their tiny hands rising in perfect unison like an orchestra's cue. Juliana turned around just in time to see Ethan standing at the entrance, face pale, brows furrowed, a man visibly shaken by ghosts no one else could see. Her smile faded slightly. She walked toward him, unsure if he needed help or had simply wandered in too fast. "Hi there, table for one?" she asked gently, wiping her hands on her apron. He blinked, snapping out of whatever storm had grabbed him. "No," he said quickly, voice too sharp. I just remembered something. I need to go." Without waiting for her response, he turned and exited, the bell above the door jingling as sharply as it had when he entered. Juliana stood still for a second, confused. The girls looked at each other. "Why did he look so sad?" Grace asked, twirling a lock of her hair. "I think he forgot to smile," Bella whispered, hugging her crayon to her chest. Don't let this get worse to wear. Like our picture, Lila murmured. What picture, baby? Jules asked absently, still staring at the door. The one in your box, Lila replied. The man with the square jaw. Juliana turned her head slowly, the breath in her lungs catching. At night, rain patted the windows of Ethan's penthouse suite in the city, but he couldn't hear it. He stood barefoot in front of his fireplace, hands pressed to the mantel as the flames flickered below. On the coffee table beside him, his assistant's research printouts sat in a neat pile, untouched. He didn't need paper to remember those eyes, or that jawline, or the way those girls had waved at him like they'd known him forever. He tried to dismiss it. Coincidence? It had to be. But inside, something deeper, older, was unraveling. The betrayal from 6 years ago, the reason he no longer trusted women, why he avoided emotional entanglements, why he surrounded himself with lawyers instead of friends. It all came crashing back. He had loved once, trusted once, believed once, and she had disappeared. Disappeared, around the same time those girls would have been born. He reached for his phone, paused, then dialed a private investigator's number from memory. I need everything you can find on a woman named Juliana Rivera, he said, voice low and clipped. She works at a diner just off Route 68. She has 3 daughters, all the same age. A beat of silence on the line. Yes, Mr. Westwood, the voice replied, right away. Ethan hung up, but the silence wasn't any lighter. He poured himself a drink and stared into it. This wasn't a business problem. This was personal. Too personal. And if what he suspected was true, if those girls were his, someone had kept the biggest secret of his life hidden from him. And he was going to find out why. Juliana stood at the edge of her daughter's bed that night, gently tucking the covers around their tiny shoulders. Bella clutched a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. Grace whispered something in her sleep, and Lila stirred but didn't wake. All 3 breathed in rhythm, their identical features soft in sleep, sober the day when the weight of not having enough sometimes dulled their joy. But tonight, something sat heavier in Juliana's chest. That man, his face, the way he looked at them, the way they looked back. She tiptoed out, careful not to wake them, and walked to the hall closet. From the very back, beneath folded towels and a shoebox full of old receipts, she pulled out a red tin. She opened it slowly, the hinge creaking. Inside were pieces of another life. Photos, a letter, a sonogram printout yellowed at the edges, and at the very bottom, folded and faded, was a picture of Ethan Westwood. 6 years ago. Younger, less hardened. Still hope. Her thumb brushed his face. She hadn't said his name aloud in years. Had trained herself not to look for him in crowded rooms, or wonder if he thought of her at all. She had promised herself he would never know. For their daughter's safety, for her own. But today, fate had ripped the cover off a story she thought she'd buried. She closed the box with trembling hands. In the city, Ethan sat at his desk, a trail of documents now lit by the desk golden hue of a desk lamp. A cup of untouched coffee steamed beside his laptop as he scrolled through the early findings from his investigator. Juliana Rivera, age 29, graduated with honors in literature, former intern at Westward Global's editorial branch, fired 6 years ago for violating a non-disclosure clause at the same time she vanished without explanation. No known partner, no marriage, no record of any lawsuit, and no birth certificates listed for her children. He narrowed his eyes. That part didn't make sense. Until a second file arrived. It included hospital admission records. 3 girls. Same birth date. No father listed. Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling like it might provide answers. The dates aligned perfectly. The betrayal he thought had been professional. He had ended things coldly, without discussion, told himself it was better that way. The moment she broke the rules, she was out. But what if she had been protecting more than just her own heart? What if she'd been protecting their children? His hands trembled. For a man who controlled empires, nothing felt in his control right now. The next morning, Jules wore her best smile as she flipped pancakes behind the diner counter. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny and offered refills before customers could ask. But inside, she was unraveling. She kept glancing at the door, half expecting Ethan to walk back in, half hoping he wouldn't. Lila sat at the end of the counter, kicking her legs, drawing on a napkin. "Mummy, are we going to see the tall man again?" she asked casually. Juliana dropped a fork. "Baby," she said too quickly. "He was just passing through." "Like me," Lila said with a grin, proud of the connection she thought she'd made. Jules bent down to kiss her forehead. "You look like you," she whispered. "You're perfect just as you are." Across town, Ethan stood in front of the diner's dusty window, watching from inside his sleek black car. He hadn't come in this time. Not yet. He just needed to see them again. And when he saw Juliana bend to kiss Lila, his heart cracked open like a fault line. He didn't know if he was ready for this truth. But he had no choice anymore. Later that afternoon, Juliana finished her shift, wiping down the last table with slow, tired circles. The diner was quiet. The girls were sitting at their usual booths, whispering secrets only 6-year-olds could understand. The bell above the door chimed. Juliana looked up and froze. Ethan walked in slowly, no coat this time, just a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. His eyes were locked on her, unreadable. The girls looked up, smiled, and waved again. He raised a hand. She met him halfway. "Hi," she said softly. He nodded. "We need to talk," he said, privately. She nodded, heart racing. "Get back," she said. They stepped into the small break room behind the kitchen, barely big enough for a table and 2 chairs. Juliana closed the door, her hand lingering on the knob like she could keep the truth sealed inside a little longer. "Are they mine?" Ethan asked without preamble, his voice steady but taut. She didn't speak. He took a step closer. "I need to know." Juliana's eyes shimmered, the wall she had built cracking. She whispered, "They're yours." Silence pressed against the walls, louder than any scream. He sat down slowly, like gravity had doubled. "Don't you tell me." Her hands trembled as she clutched the edge of the table. "Because the night I found out I was pregnant, I got the termination notice from your company. No warning, no explanation. I thought it was punishment, and I was scared. Alone. You made it clear, whatever we had, it was over." Ethan's face went pale. "I didn't know," he said. "I thought you leaked something. Legal told me it was clear-cut. I didn't even read the full report." Her laugh was hollow. "Well, that decision cost you 6 years of knowing your daughters." His throat tightened. "I want to fix this." "You can't fix 6, she said. "You can't rewind. You can't walk in here and pretend they're just some new investment to win." "I'm not here to win," Ethan said. "I'm here because I looked at them and I saw myself. But I also saw what I lost." Juliana stared at him. "Now what?" He looked at her, not with the coldness of a CEO, but with the raw, scared vulnerability of a man who just found his heart again. "You want to be part of their lives, whatever that means. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance." Juliana didn't answer right away. In the silence, Lila knocked on the door. "Mommy," she called, "can he stay for dinner?" Juliana and Ethan locked eyes. Maybe fate wasn't finished with them after all. 6 years earlier, the streets of New York were a blur of rain-soaked neon and late-night laughter. Jules had just finished her waitressing shift at a midtown hotel restaurant, her feet aching and her curls pulled into a frizzy ponytail. She had spilled wine on a senator's wife earlier that evening and dropped a tray of oysters in the kitchen. It wasn't her best day. But the man at table 16 had smiled at her like she was the most captivating thing in the room. His name was Ethan, just Ethan. She didn't know then that he was the heir to the Westwood empire. All she saw was a man in a rumpled navy suit, no tie, who tipped generously and asked how her night was going as if he actually cared. She'd laughed, told him honestly that her night was a disaster, and expected him to walk away. He didn't, huh? They talked until closing, then wandered the empty sidewalks of Manhattan like two people who'd been waiting for each other without knowing it. The city didn't sleep, but it hushed for them that night. He'd bought her a pretzel from a cart, and she dragged him into a 24-hour bookstore. When he kissed her on the rooftop of her tiny apartment building at dawn, the sky blushed with the first light. They had 3 nights, 3 chaotic, beautiful, too good to be true nights. And then he was gone. No note, no call. Just gone. Jules tried to tell herself it had been a fantasy, a fling, but when her period didn't come, reality hit harder than heartbreak ever could. She wrote him, called his office, even sent a letter to the hotel where he'd said he was staying. A response. But she didn't know that Ethan had received a call the morning he left. A call from his father. There was a crisis at Westwood Global, an executive scandal about to go public. The press was circling. His father's voice, always cold and commanding, told him to come home immediately. "You've had your little play," he said. "Now grow up. This family doesn't survive because we follow our hearts." Ethan had left without saying goodbye. He had convinced himself it was for the best, that she would forget him, that whatever spark they had would burn out quietly. But that spark had grown into 3 little girls with his eyes. Back in the present, Jules wiped her hands on her apron as she spotted Ethan entering the diner again the next morning. Her heart thudded against her ribs. He wasn't just passing through now. He was staying. Digging. The girls were at school, thank God. Ethan looked more tired than the day before, less polished. His shirt was wrinkled. There was a stain on his cuff. She met him behind the counter, arms crossed tightly. "You're back," she said flatly. He replied. Juliana nodded once, like she had expected as much, but dreaded it anyway. "I want to know the truth," he said. "All of it." Juliana's voice was low. "Now you want to know." He didn't respond, just waited. So, she walked to the back of the diner and gestured for him to follow. They sat at the same tiny break room table. "You want to know the truth?" she said. "Then here it is." She told him about the letters, the calls, how she searched for him, how the silence nearly broke her. "I thought I meant something to you," she said, "and then you vanished. I didn't know if you were dead or just cruel." His face darkened. Linda sat on a few stragglets reflectively. "My father, he controlled everything back then. I didn't even know you tried to reach me." Juliana blinked. "That's convenient." "Endly," he said, leaning in. "It's the truth. I didn't forget you, Jules. I tried to come back 2 weeks later, but your apartment was empty. Your number was disconnected. It was like you'd disappeared." "Because I had to," she said bitterly. "I lost my internship, got blacklisted from every hotel job in the city. I had no money, and I was pregnant." Ethan flinched. "I didn't know," he whispered. She said, voice cracking. "You didn't want to know." Silence stretched between them. The hum of the old refrigerator was the only sound. Then Ethan asked, almost afraid of the answer, "Are they mine?" Juliana looked at him long and hard. "You tell me," she said. He leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face. "Look exactly like me." "We do," she said. "And not just your face. Grace is stubborn like you. Bella stares out the window like you did on that bookstore night. Lila hums in her sleep." Emotion welled in his eyes. "I missed everything." "You did," she said. "And I had to do it alone. Not proud of that." She looked down. "I didn't come here to start a war," Ethan said softly. "I came because when I saw them, I knew. And I couldn't walk away." Juliana's voice was soft but firm. "You don't get to barge into their lives because you feel something, now." "I don't want to barge in, I want to earn it." She stared at him for a long time. "To your wife. You say that now," she said, "but they're not a headline or a business deal. They're little girls who don't know what you are to them. who don't know, you walked out before you even knew them. Ethan nodded, ashamed. I want to meet them, he said. Please. Juliana's shoulders sank. She said, I need time. I'll wait. You say that, she whispered. But the moment it gets hard, will you still be here? His voice was quiet. Yes? Juliana didn't believe him yet. But something in her chest stirred. Something she had buried a long time ago. The bell above the diner door chimed again that afternoon. Jules looked up from her notepad, expecting another regular, but instead, it was her mother, Teresa, with her hands on the shoulders of 3 identical girls. Juliana froze. Ayla, Grace, Lila. Their braids were slightly crooked and their shoes scuffed from recess. Bella had marker on her chin. Grace was already tugging at the cookie jar behind the counter. Lila spotted her mother and beamed. Mommy! They all ran to her in unison, as if they shared the same thought. Juliana knelt to scoop them up, her arms barely wrapping around all 3. For a moment the world narrowed to this, her girls, her breath, her heartbeat. Then she looked up, and Ethan was standing in the corner. He hadn't meant to be there. He hadn't meant to see them yet. But when he'd walked back in with the excuse of grabbing coffee, he hadn't expected to witness the rawest, most beautiful moment of his life. 3 little girls, all with eyes just like his, running into the arms of the woman he'd left behind. One of them looked over her mother's shoulder and spotted him. Ella, bold and curious, tilted her head. Mommy, who's that man? Juliana stood slowly. She hadn't answered Ethan yet. She hadn't prepared for this. Before she could speak, Grace added, He looks like us. Juliana's voice caught in her throat. Girls, this is Ethan. Ethan stepped forward. His voice was soft. Hi. Bella narrowed her eyes. Do we know you? He crouched to their level, his heart pounded. Not yet. Juliana gave him a look one said not to say more. Not yet. Ethan stood up. I was just leaving. Lila whispered something to her sister. Grace nodded solemnly and asked, Do you like pancakes? Ethan blinked. Juliana chuckled under her breath. That's her version of making friends. I like. Then maybe, Grace said thoughtfully, you can sit with us next time. Maybe, he said, voice almost breaking. Juliana watched the exchange, her heart twisting. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Ethan sat alone in the town's quiet motel, staring at the ceiling. The room was basic beige walls, a humming heater, one lonely lamp, but he couldn't remember the last time he had felt this shaken. He had spent years building empires, closing deals, acquiring hotels in 10 countries, but none of it had ever mattered like this. He thought of Juliana, how strong she'd become, how fiercely she protected the girls, and how much pain she had carried all alone. And those girls, they were part of him. He opened his laptop and searched everything about Juliana Rivera. He found old hospital records, a student loan, default, a short stay in a women's shelter. She had dropped out of her hospitality program just a month after he left New York. His gut clenched. And then he found something else. An article buried in the archives, a photo of Jules holding her newborn triplets. Miracle Mom beats the odds, the headline read. The caption beneath the photo made him inhale sharply. Juliana Rivera, 22, gave birth to 3 healthy girls after being abandoned by the father, who remains unknown. I don't need his name, she told us. I have my daughters. They are enough. He shut the laptop. His throat burned. He'd hurt her. He hadn't even known how much. The next morning, Ethan stood outside the diner at sunrise. He watched the lights flicker on, one by one. He waited as Juliana unlocked the door, apron already tied, hair tucked under a scarf. She looked surprised to see him. I didn't think you'd come back. I didn't think I could stay away. She stepped outside, folding her arms, the morning air brisk. Read everything I could about you, he said quietly. What you went through. Juliana didn't speak. She should have fought harder, he said. I should have found you. I didn't know what my father kept from me. But it's not an excuse. She said. It's not. I want to make it right. Juliana turned to him. You can't erase the years. I know. You can't just step into their lives because you feel guilty. I'm not here because of guilt, he said. I'm here because I looked into their eyes and saw myself. And I saw you. I'm here because they're my daughters, and I want to know them. I want to know you again. Juliana looked away. The sun cast golden light across the sidewalk, warming her cheeks. You need to protect them, she said. They're everything. Then let me prove I'm not the man I was. Juliana's voice trembled. They don't know the word dad. I never taught it to them. I didn't want them to ask questions I couldn't answer. Ethan swallowed hard. Then teach them who I am slowly, carefully. I will follow your lead. She studied him. This man who had once been a ghost in her life, now standing here, eyes wide open, hands trembling slightly. There was remorse in every line of his face, but more than that, there was hope. Juliana finally said, one step at a time. Ethan exhaled. I can do that. He held out his hand not for a handshake, not to force anything, but a gesture of willingness, of starting again. She looked at it, and then slowly she took it. The sun rose behind them, casting two long shadows onto the pavement. Shadows not of the past, but of what might come next. The next morning, the bell above the diner door jingled again, and this time, Jules didn't need to look up. She already knew it was him, Ethan Westwood. The man who had once vanished like smoke, now walking back into her life with the same storm in his eyes. But this time, it wasn't charm swirling in them, it was purpose. He stood in front of her counter, not asking for coffee. Not today. I want to know the truth, he said quietly. I want to take a DNA test. Jules wiped her hands on a towel and met his gaze head on, her expression unreadable. And if you are, their father. Want to be in their lives. A few nods, and I'll walk away. A long silence stretched between them. Then Jules nodded, her jaw tight. Not for you, she said, but for them. They deserve to know. She turned and walked into the kitchen without another word. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, then finally exhaled. That afternoon, the girls sat in the booth by the window, coloring quietly. Grace, always the most inquisitive, looked up and whispered to her sisters. Does that man look like us? Bella rolled her eyes. Because lots of people look alike. It's called doppel something. Lila, who rarely spoke unless she had something to say, looked up from her sketch pad. His eyes were the same, and his smile. From the kitchen, Jules overheard them. Her heart clenched. She had always known this day would come, but not like this, not so soon. Not with him standing just 10 feet away, ordering orange juice and pancakes while her daughters studied him like a living puzzle piece that had been missing from their picture. Later that evening, Ethan met her behind the diner, away from the staff, away from the girls. I already called a private clinic, he said. They can do the test discreetly. You don't have to come if you don't want to. You think I'd let my daughters walk into a room with you and just trust it'll go fine? Jules snapped. No. I'm going, and they won't know what it's for, not yet. Ethan's face softened. I'm not trying to hurt them, or you. You already did, she replied, turning on her heel before he could respond. 2 days later, they took the test. The girls thought they were getting a routine checkup. Jules held their hands and smiled like it was all normal, while Ethan stood in the corner, silent, stiff, trying not to tremble as the swabs were taken. When they left the clinic, Jules turned to him. It'll take a week. He nodded. I'll wait. You waited 6 years, she muttered. What's one more week? Ethan didn't leave town. Instead, he began showing up at the diner more often. At first, Jules thought it was just to be near the girls, but she realized quickly he wasn't just watching them. He was learning them. He watched how Bella loved to sneak extra sugar into her lemonade when she thought Jules wasn't looking. How Grace fidgeted with her necklace when she was nervous, how Lila sat quietly with her sketch pad, drawing things far beyond what 6-year-olds usually imagined, shapes and scenes that held stories. He sat at the corner booth, silent sometimes, other times scribbling in a notebook. He never pushed, never asked, just watched, waited. Jules noticed too how he never stayed long enough to make the girls question. He never forced himself into their world, only observed it from the edge. But he didn't fool her. She saw the longing in his face, the way his hands twitched when the girls laughed, the way he flinched when Bella called one of the older customers grandpa, and the man smiled back with a warmth Ethan had never earned. One evening, as Jules closed the diner and wiped down the counter, she felt a presence behind her. "You're making this harder than it has to be," Ethan said quietly. She turned. "Harder for who? You?" Her eyes flashed. "You think you can just show up, hand over a DNA test, and I'll what? Throw open the doors to their lives? Let you make up for 6 years of silence in 6 days? I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a chance." "You had a chance. You vanished." Ethan stepped closer. "You think I wanted to disappear? That I forgot you? I got a call from my father the morning after us. There was a corporate scandal. My entire family name was on fire. He demanded I come home and take control. I didn't even get to tell you goodbye." "After that?" Jules asked, voice breaking. "What about the months I spent writing to you, the letters, the calls?" "I never got them. He blocked everything. He said you were a distraction, that you were trying to trap me." Jules blinked hard. "So, you believed him?" "But I couldn't even believe. And by the time I realized he lied, it was too late." The silence between them roared like a storm. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Ethan finally said, "but please, don't shut me out completely. Let the girls decide when the time comes. Let the truth speak first." Jules looked down, her voice quiet and steady. "Don't make promises you won't keep. They don't need another ghost." The next morning, the girls arrived at the diner ahead of schedule. It was Grace's birthday. Ethan was already there, seated quietly at his usual table, a small wrapped box beside him. Jules approached. "What is that?" "It's for Grace. Just a book, nothing flashy." She hesitated, then nodded once. "Keep it simple, no expectations." He handed it to Grace later, after breakfast. She opened it carefully, revealing a beautifully illustrated copy of The Secret Garden. Her eyes lit up. "It was my mom's favorite," Ethan said softly. "I thought, maybe you'd like it too." Grace beamed, then turned to show her sisters. Jules watched from behind the counter, her chest tight. Something about the way Grace's hands traced the cover, the way Ethan watched her with aching tenderness, made Jules feel like the ground beneath her feet was shifting. That night, when the girls were asleep and the diner was dark, Jules sat alone at the kitchen table, the DNA test envelope resting in her hands. Her fingers trembled. She didn't open it. Not yet. But she knew. She had always known. The next morning, the diner was quiet. A rare hush had settled in, broken only by the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional clang of cutlery being set for the early morning rush. Jules stood in the back hallway, the unopened DNA envelope in her hands. It felt heavier than it should have been, as though the paper contained not just truth, but judgment. She stared at it, her fingers brushing over her name typed neatly on the front. She didn't need to open it. Deep down, she had always known, but confirmation? That changed things. That made the past real and the future unavoidable. Footsteps sounded on the tiled floor, and she quickly slipped the envelope into her apron pocket just as Ethan entered. "Morning," he said, his voice hesitant, almost gentle. Jules gave a tight nod. "You're early." He couldn't sleep. She looked at him. He was wearing a gray wool coat over his button down, his hair still damp from a shower, but his eyes held something quieter, like anticipation, edged with fear. "You want coffee?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "And maybe the truth?" Jules didn't flinch. She pulled the envelope from her pocket and slid it across the counter. "I haven't read it yet." Ethan stared at it, the quiet between them louder than any conversation. "Want to open it together?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded once. With a deep breath, Ethan peeled the flap open and unfolded the paper inside. His eyes scanned the first few lines. Then he exhaled, like the air had left his lungs all at once. He passed the paper across to her as Jules read it slowly, deliberately. Paternity probability 99%. Ethan Westwood is the biological father of Grace Rivera, Bella Rivera, and Lila Rivera. She closed her eyes. "I'm their father," Ethan whispered. "I really am." She looked at him. "You thought there was a chance? You weren't?" "No," he said honestly. "I think I just needed to hear it. After everything, after so many lies, I needed proof." Jules folded the paper and slid it back into the envelope. "Now you have it." Ethan leaned on the counter. "What happens now?" She stared at him for a long time, then spoke softly. "That depends on you." The girls were in the back booth again, crayons scattered across the table, drawing their latest masterpiece. A castle, a crown, and what looked like a man with dark hair holding hands, with 3 smiling girls. When Jules approached, Bella held up the paper. "Look, Mama, it's the king. We made him up," Grace added. "Yeah, he has the same eyes as us, and the same hair," Lila said quietly. Jules crouched down, her voice gentle. "Do you like the king?" "He's nice," Grace said. "He brings books." Bella grinned. "And he always says hi to us, even when he looks nervous." Lila looked at her mother, tilting her head. "Stranger is he?" Jules' throat tightened. "No," she said. "Not anymore." That afternoon, Ethan returned to the diner. This time he brought something with him, a photo. It was old, a little faded, but the man in it was unmistakable. Ethan, maybe a little younger, standing on the beach, laughing at something behind the camera. He handed it to Jules wordlessly. She studied it, her brow furrowed. "Taken the weekend we met," Ethan said. "It's the only photo I have from then. My father had the rest wiped when I got back." "Like you never existed." Jules stared at the picture. She remembered that day, the way the wind had tangled her hair, the way his laugh had made her believe maybe love could be simple. "It wasn't just a fling, Jules," he said. "I wanted more. I didn't run because I wanted to. I ran because I had no choice." "You always had a choice," she said, folding the photo and handing it back. "You just didn't choose us." The next few days blurred into a strange rhythm. Ethan stopped by the diner each morning, staying just long enough to greet the girls, sometimes leaving a book or a puzzle or simply watching from a distance. Girls grew more curious, more open. Grace started asking about her father. Bella wondered out loud why Ethan always smiled when they did. Lila, always the quietest, began drawing him into their family portraits just on the edge, as if waiting to be let in. One evening, as Jules tucked them into bed, Grace spoke up. "Mommy, do you think the king wants to stay?" Jules paused. "What do you mean?" "Bean. He's always looking at us like he misses something. Like he wants to stay but is scared," Bella chimed in. "He's not scary. I think he's sad." Lila simply whispered, "I think he's ours." Jules sat on the edge of their bed, brushing hair from each of their foreheads. "Sometimes people get lost," she said softly. "Even grown-ups. But when they find their way back, it doesn't mean everything's fixed right away." "Does that mean he can stay?" Grace asked. Jules looked at them, 3 sets of matching eyes, so full of hope. "We'll see," she said. The following weekend, Ethan brought something different. He didn't enter the diner with his usual cautious steps. Instead, he stood outside, holding a large canvas bag and a hesitant smile. Jules opened the door, eyebrow raised. "What is that?" "An art set," he said. "I remember you telling me once you used to paint. Thought maybe the girls would want to try." "They're 6, Jules said. "At least 2 are your daughters," he replied. "Something tells me creativity runs deep." Jules narrowed her eyes. "You think gifts will earn you points?" Ethan said sincerely. "But I'm trying. I don't know how else to show them I care." "Try showing up," she said. That's what they'll remember, not the paintbrushes. Later that afternoon, the girls sat outside behind the diner, paper laid out on picnic tables, little hands covered in splotches of paint. Ethan stood nearby, watching them laugh and smear colors across the page. Bella held up her painting, stick figure family. "This one's you," she yelled at Ethan. He blinked. "Me?" Tall guy, spiky hair. "That's you." Ethan crouched next to her, overwhelmed. "Thanks, Bella," she shrugged. "We still don't know your name, though," he smiled. Grace looked up. "Can we call you Ethan, or do we call you something else?" He hesitated. "You can call me whatever feels right." The girls exchanged a glance, then went back to painting. Jules watched from the back door. Her chest felt heavy with things unsaid. Night, Ethan stayed after close. Jules sat across from him in the empty diner, the hum of the ceiling fan filling the silence. "You like you," she finally said. "I like them too. They're starting to ask real questions. I'll answer them, honestly." Jules looked down at her hands. "You know what scares me?" she whispered. "That they'll fall for you. That they'll open their hearts, and then you'll disappear again." "I won't. You can't promise that." "I can. I am. I didn't get to choose last time, Jules, but this time, no one's making the choice for me." She looked at him, her voice low and raw. "They don't need another goodbye." Ethan leaned forward. "Then I'll stay, as long as it takes, as long as they'll have me, and as long as you'll let me." Outside, the stars hung low, silent witnesses to promises too fragile to speak out. But inside the diner, something had begun to shift. Forgiveness. Not forgiveness, but maybe the very first steps toward something close. Ethan stood at the edge of the diner parking lot, watching Jules carry 2 trays of milkshakes to a group of teenagers by the window. Her ponytail bounced as she moved, and even from a distance he could see the fatigue in her steps. His girls, were seated inside at the corner booth, coloring on the back of a kid's menu while occasionally stealing fries off each other's. He couldn't shake the guilt that had nested in his chest since the DNA test confirmed what he already knew. Bella, Grace, Lila, they were his, and for 6 years they'd grown up without him. No bedtime stories, no birthday candles blown out with his applause, no arms to catch them after nightmares. The next morning he arrived early. Too early. The diner was still quiet. Jules was setting out salt shakers, her apron wrinkled, her hair undone. She froze when she saw him. "You're not eating again, are you?" And a moment before Park's words carried comfort. "I'm here for pancakes," he said gently. "I'm here because I owe them more than just a name." She crossed her arms. "They don't need a name, Ethan. They need consistency. They need someone who shows up." He reached into his coat and pulled out a thin folder. "I had some documents prepared. Not legal stuff, nothing binding, just an offer." His eyes narrowed. "What kind of offer?" He placed the folder on the counter and stepped back. "A trust fund for each of them. College, therapy if they ever want it, anything they need. I also found a place near here, bigger house, safe neighborhood, garden space, and I've already contacted a private school that specializes in advanced learning. Jules, Bella's reading at a 3rd grade level. Grace is already doing math puzzles I couldn't solve at her age. They deserve more." She opened the folder, scanned the papers, then closed it quietly. "Is this supposed to make up for the last 6 years?" "PB," he said without hesitation. "It's not about me anymore, it's about them." She studied him for a moment. "You think money will fix this?" He winced. "No, but it might give them choices." "You know what they want more than choices?" Her voice trembled. "They want their mom to smile again. They want someone to sit through a whole school recital without checking a phone. They want to know the man who looks like them isn't going to vanish the moment things get hard. I'm not going anywhere." Fletcher once. The words landed like a punch. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, a shout came from the parking lot. He replied. A man in a black hoodie held up a camera, snapping furiously through the window. Ethan instinctively turned, shielding his face. Jules cursed under her breath and rushed to the girls, who were already wide-eyed, sliding under the table. The man kept clicking. Is this your secret family, Ethan? Hiding out in a roadside diner now? Ethan stormed toward him. Delete the photos. Now. Make me, the man sneered, before jumping into a waiting sedan and peeling out of the lot. The damage had already been done. Within an hour, the diner was swarmed. Reporters lined the street. Customers whispered, pointing their phones toward Jules and the girls. A trending hashtag had already started online. Westwood triplets. The internet had turned them into a scandal. Jules sat in the break room, her hands shaking as she held her phone. Comments poured in, some sympathetic, many cruel. Gold digger, opportunist, liar, homewrecker. Ethan paced outside, his jaw clenched, speaking rapidly into his phone. I don't care if it's Saturday. Get the press team. I want a statement written by noon. A live event by 3. No delay. He hung up and stormed inside, finding Jules staring blankly at the floor. In fixing this, he said, I'm calling a press conference. You shouldn't have to deal with this alone. Jules didn't look up. This is why I didn't want help, because with you, help comes with headlines. For attacking you for something I caused. I don't want your rescue, she snapped. I want peace. For me, for them. I've protected them their whole lives, and the moment you step in, the world rips us apart. He knelt in front of her. Then let me protect them now. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. What about when another story breaks? When the board at Westwood Hotels calls you in for damage control? Are we just a photo op to clean your image? He looked wounded. You think that's why I'm here? Why don't you relate to me? I don't know why you're here, Ethan. Maybe guilt, maybe curiosity, but none of those are reasons to stay. I want to stay because I've missed too much already, he said quietly, and I won't miss more. A knock interrupted them. One of the diner staff poked her head in. The girls are crying. Jules bolted from the room. In the booth, Bella was holding Grace while Lila stared at the door, her bottom lip trembling. Are you going to leave us again? Bella asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. No, he said, moving toward them. No, I'm not leaving. Jules picked up Lila and sat beside them. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Girls, I know today's been scary, but you're not alone. I'm here. Always. Bella looked at Ethan, her eyes searching. Then why were you gone? Ethan knelt, eye level with them. Because I made a mistake, a very big one, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I'm here now, and I want to be part of your lives if you'll let me. Grace frowned. Only if you like chocolate chip pancakes. Ethan smiled, a flicker of relief. That's my favorite kind. The girls exchanged looks, then Bella reached over and gently took his hand. Then maybe you can sit with us, just for breakfast. Tears filled Ethan's eyes, but he nodded. Just for breakfast, he whispered. Jules said nothing, but as she glanced at the 3 little girls leaning into the man who looked so much like them, she felt the ground shift beneath her. She wasn't ready to forgive him, not yet. But maybe, just maybe, the girls were. By the next morning, every major news outlet had picked up the story. Photos of Ethan holding Bella's hand while leaving the diner were splashed across headlines with cruel speculation. Secret triplets, gold digger waitress, or long-lost love, and Ethan Westwood's hidden family. Jules stood by the sink in her kitchen, scrubbing the same plate for the 3rd time. She could hear the girls in the next room arguing about glitter glue, their voices rising and falling in waves. But her mind was somewhere else entirely. She'd kept them safe for 6 years. 6. And with one photograph, the walls she'd built were crumbling. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This one said, "You finally caught your meal ticket." She didn't realize she was shaking until Grace tiptoed in behind her and tugged her shirt. "Mama?" Jules turned quickly and crouched. "What is it, baby?" Grace blinked. "Are you sad again?" Jules pulled her into a hug and held her tightly. "No, sweetheart, I'm just tired." Just then, a knock at the door. "Ethan." He stood holding 2 large brown bags from the bakery downtown. "I brought muffins. And coffee. Please let me in. She hesitated. Wish talk. She stepped aside silently. He walked in and looked around the small, neat kitchen. You always liked cinnamon raisin. She didn't answer, just poured herself more coffee. I didn't sleep much last night, he began, placing the bag on the counter. I've spent most of it reading every single disgusting thing being said about you online. Then you know why I didn't want your help, she replied, still not facing him. I'm holding a press conference this afternoon. I've already told them I'll only answer questions if they agree to a no-ambush policy about you and the girls. And what are you going to say, she asked bitterly, that you were young and foolish and didn't know? That we were a fling, and now you're trying to do the right thing? I was a coward, he said, voice low, and that I hurt the only woman I've ever loved. Excellently. That got her attention. She turned, slowly. You don't get to say that, Ethan. You don't get to walk back into my life with a briefcase full of money and pretty words and rewrite history. I begged you to respond. I sent letters. I called. I know, and I will never stop being sorry. She blinked, tears burning behind her eyes. I raised them without help. I worked nights, skipped meals, hid from landlords. They were born 2 months early, Ethan. Do you know what it's like sitting alone in the NICU, praying they breathe on their own? He looked gutted. No, I don't. Her voice cracked. And now you want to hand me trust funds and a bigger house like it's some kind of apology? I want to give you options, choices you didn't have before. You can say no to everything, but please, don't say I didn't try. The silence stretched between them until Lila wandered into the room in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. She looked at Ethan and then at the muffins. Can I have one? She asked. Jules nodded. Ethan stepped forward, pulling one out of the bag. Blueberry or banana? Banana, Lila said softly. He handed it to her and she smiled. Thank you, sir. Ethan laughed gently. You don't have to call me sir. Okay, she said, turning to Jules. Can he stay for breakfast again? Jules hesitated. Lila's eyes were so full of hope. She finally nodded. He can stay. The morning passed quietly. Ethan sat with the girls on the floor, helping them build towers with wooden blocks, while Jules sipped coffee and watched. She hated how easy he was with them, how natural, how seamless. Later that afternoon, she watched the press conference from her phone. Ethan stood in front of a sea of microphones, flanked by 2 bodyguards and a wall of cameras. I want to make one thing clear, he began. Juliana Rivera is not a gold digger. She is not a scandal. She is a remarkable woman who raised 3 daughters with strength, dignity, and no help from me. That failure is mine, not hers. He paused, his jaw tightening. For 6 years, those girls lived without knowing their father. That too is on me. I was wrong. I was weak, and I let fear and pressure keep me from the truth. But I'm here now, not to rewrite the past, but to be present in the future. Jules felt something shift in her chest. He continued, any invasion of their privacy, any attempts to shame or harass her or our daughters will be met with the full extent of my legal and financial resources. This ends now. The clip ended. Her hand was still trembling. That evening, he knocked again. Jules answered, arms crossed. I said what I needed to, Ethan said, and I meant every word. She nodded slowly. You did good. Then her voice turned quiet. But money can't buy back years. But maybe it can buy time. Real time. Starting now. She didn't reply, just turned back inside. He stood there for a long time, uncertain, until a voice behind him made him turn. Bella stood at the door, clutching a drawing. It's us, she said, holding it out. Me, Grace, Lila, Mama, and you. Ethan knelt and took the paper with shaking hands. I love it, he said. Are you going to stay this time? She asked, eyes searching his face. I want to, he said, if you'll let me. She thought for a moment, then gave a small nod. Okay, but no more disappearing. more," he promised. Jules watched from the hallway, heart aching. She didn't know what tomorrow held. But tonight, maybe, just maybe, she could let herself hope. It started with Sunday pancakes. Ethan stood in Jules's tiny kitchen, wearing an apron that read, "Kiss the cook," flipping uneven circles of batter onto the pan while the girls sat cross-legged on the floor behind him. Grace was in charge of stirring syrup into the softened butter. Bella was playing DJ with a Bluetooth speaker that kept cutting out, and Lila was drawing quietly at the table, her little brows furrowed in concentration. "You're gonna burn it," Bella warned, pointing at the smoking edge of the pancake. "I am not," Ethan insisted, flipping it anyway and proving her right. She laughed. "Told you?" "Okay, I admit it, you win," he groaned. 1 point to Bella. Grace giggled, holding up a finger. "I get a point if I can make the syrup swirl like a tornado." "I want points too," Lila said without looking up. "I'm drawing something important." Ethan glanced at her paper and froze. It was a picture of 5 stick figures, each labeled carefully in pink crayon. Lila, Bella, Grace, Mommy, and Daddy. He didn't say anything, just swallowed hard and turned back to the stove. That night, after Jules tucked them in, she returned to the kitchen and saw Ethan sitting at the table, quietly smoothing out the drawing Lila had left behind. He didn't notice she was watching. "She called you Daddy," Jules said softly. Ethan looked up, startled. "I heard her," she added. "All 3 of them have started saying it." He folded the drawing carefully and slipped it into the inside pocket of his coat. "I won't ask them to stop." "Yes. I didn't say you should." They stood in silence for a beat too long, then Jules reached for a glass of water. "Thanks. For breakfast. Even if the pancakes were chewy is a valid texture," he argued. She smiled. Barely, but it was there. The next few weeks unfolded like chapters in a book no one expected to write. Ethan adjusted his schedule, pushing back meetings, rearranging travel, sometimes even taking calls from Jules's front porch, just to hear the girls laugh through the open window. He learned that Bella liked spicy ketchup on everything, that Grace collected keychains like little trophies, and that Lila hated loud noises but loved when people whispered secrets just to her. He learned how to do Jules's laundry without shrinking her jeans, how to braid Grace's hair without pulling, and how to read 3 different bedtime stories in the same 10-minute window without losing track of plot lines. And each time he went home, he carried something new, another piece of paper, another drawing. Grace's picture had hearts and stars all around it. She drew Ethan with superhero arms and labeled him, "My dad, who saved things." Bella's was more dramatic. She drew them in a diner, all 5 of them holding hands, but above Ethan's head was a dark cloud. She explained later, "It's the sad he brought with him. But it's leaving." He kept all 3 drawings in the top drawer of his office desk, buried under reports and contracts. Sometimes during board meetings, he would sneak a glance at them, letting the chaos of the business world fade into the background. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Ethan found Jules standing outside on the porch with a blanket draped around her shoulders. The stars were out, bright and scattered across the velvet sky. He stood next to her, hands in his pockets. "You're doing a good job with them," she said quietly. He turned to her, startled. "That means more than you know. I just don't know how long this version of you lasts." "Do you mean?" "I mean, I've seen men change when things get hard, when the shine wears off, when the everyday kicks in. I'm not going anywhere, Jules." He nodded slowly. "Then let me prove I won't again." She looked away, blinking fast. "You're here now, yes, but I've spent 6 years convincing them they didn't need a father. If you leave again, I won't be the only one broken." "Hear you," he whispered, "and I'll earn it. Every day, no shortcuts." That night, Jules stayed up late doing invoices for the diner. The numbers weren't great. Supplies had gone up, customers had dipped, and the morning rush wasn't what it used to be. She sighed, rubbing her temples, her eyes drooping. By morning, she collapsed. It happened suddenly, her body going limp at the register, coffee spilling as she slumped against the wall. One of the regulars shouted her name. A waitress screamed. Someone called Ethan. He got there before the ambulance did. He dropped everything, left a quarterly financial review mid-sentence, bolted out of his office, and was at the diner in 12 minutes flat. She was unconscious but breathing when he found her. Pale, sweaty, her lips dry. He held her hand all the way to the hospital. The girls were left in trusted hands. The neighbor, Miss D, a retired nurse who knew how to keep them calm without lies. Ethan paced the hospital corridor for hours, demanding updates, refusing to leave the floor. Nurses tried to ease him away. He wouldn't budge. When the doctor finally emerged, Ethan rushed forward. "She's stable," the doctor said. "Severe dehydration, exhaustion, probably hasn't been sleeping or eating properly. She needs rest. Real rest, not the kind single moms try to pretend is enough." "Can I see her?" The doctor nodded. "She's still sleeping, but yes." Ethan entered the dimly lit room, heart pounding. Jules lay beneath thin white sheets, an IV in her arm, her lips parted as she sloped. He pulled a chair close and sat down slowly. "I should have taken better care of you," he whispered. She stirred faintly, her lips moving just enough to let the words out. "I did it all alone," she murmured. "I was so scared." Ethan's eyes filled. He reached for her hand again, and this time, she didn't let go. Jules woke up to the soft hum of hospital machinery and a chair creaking beside her. At first, she thought she was dreaming. Someone was holding her hand, warm, steady, but she turned her head and saw Ethan. Slouched over in the armchair, asleep, his tie loosened and his face pale with worry. Her eyes lingered on him for a long moment. 6 years ago, she had fallen for a version of him that disappeared without a goodbye. But this Ethan, exhausted, unshaven, clutching her hand in a hospital room, felt real. Human. Fractured in all the right places. She didn't wake him. Instead, she looked at the ceiling and whispered, "Please, don't let this be temporary." The girls came to visit later that afternoon, escorted by Miss D. Lila carried a stuffed bunny. Grace brought a notebook filled with get-well doodles. Bella, as usual, brought questions. "Are you gonna die?" Abella asked bluntly as she climbed onto the hospital bed. "Bella," Grace snapped. And Jules chuckled weakly. "I'm not dying, sweetie, just really tired." "Did Ethan make you tired?" Bella asked suspiciously. Jules said softly, meeting Ethan's eyes. "Life did, but he helped me rest." Plato studied both of them for a long second, then leaned in and whispered in Jules's ear. "He read us stories last night. They weren't as good as yours, but they were funny." Jules smiled. "He's learning." That night, when the girls went home, Ethan stayed. He brought her soup, sat by her bed again. And when she finally turned to him and said, "You don't have to keep proving yourself," he answered, "I know, but I will anyway." The next morning, Jules was discharged with strict instructions to rest and avoid stress. Of course, life didn't listen. They were barely home when the front door slammed open. Bella, Grace, and Lila running in from the porch, waving sheets of paper in the air. "Marmee, look what we made," Grace cried. "We're all different," Bella added. "Sure, sire, they're all ours," Lila said proudly. Jules unfolded the 3 pictures on the table. Lila's drawing had the 5 of them, Jules, Ethan, and the 3 girls standing in a flower field, holding hands. Above it, she wrote in bold purple crayon, "My family." Grace's was more abstract. Lots of hearts, stars, and a castle with a big door. Inside the door were 5 tiny figures. She wrote, "Us together, forever if we want." Ang Bella, ever the dramatic one, drew a stage. On it stood 2 spotlights, one on Jules, one on Ethan. In between them were the girls, smiling, holding signs that read, "Don't leave." Jules held the pictures close to her chest, her throat tightening. "Do you want to keep them?" Grace asked Ethan. "I already have some," he admitted. "They're in my office drawer." Jules blinked. "You kept them?" For the only things that ever made those meetings bearable. She didn't know what to say. Later that evening, Ethan returned to the house after taking a call. He walked in quietly and found Jules at the sink, washing a mug with slow, methodical movements. "Bad news?" she asked without turning. "Not really, just complicated." He stepped closer. "I'm supposed to be in Singapore next week for a tech summit, but I don't want to go. I want to be here. With you." "With them?" She dried the mug and set it down. "If you stay, what happens when the next summit comes? The next board crisis?" "I make it work." She turned to face him. "They don't need you to be perfect, Ethan. They just need you to show up, again and again, even when it's messy." Jules exhaled slowly. "That's not a promise to me. It's to them. I know." The next few days passed quietly, peacefully. They baked cupcakes, which turned out half-burned and hilarious. They watched cartoons that Ethan couldn't understand but laughed at anyway. They had a pillow fight that ended with Lila asleep in the laundry basket and Grace declaring herself the queen of feathers. And through it all, Jules watched Ethan. Ask Jack, not just what he did, but who he was becoming. One night, she found him asleep on the couch, with all three girls piled on top of him like puppies. Lila curled against his side, Grace drooling on his shoulder, Bella holding his hand like a tether. Jules didn't wake them. She just stood there and let the quiet, aching warmth fill her chest. But not everything stayed gentle. Next morning, as Jules walked to the mailbox, a sleek black car pulled up across the street. A man in a suit stepped out, holding a tablet. "Press Rivera?" he asked. "Yes?" He handed her the screen. It was open to a headline. "Dinner waitress caught in a secret affair with billionaire Ethan Westwood, gold digger or devoted mother." Below it were grainy photos, Ethan at the diner, Ethan walking with the girls, one where he kissed Jules on the cheek as he left the hospital. Jules felt the blood drain from her face. She didn't need to scroll further to know what the comments said. That night, she confronted Ethan. "I didn't leak it," he swore. "I promise. I believe you, but there's no time to debate." He stood outside aloud. "It's out there. I'll fix it. You'll write a check big enough to erase gossip?" He said, voice low. "I'll speak. The next morning, the press gathered outside Westwood Industries. Cameras clicked, reporters shouted. Ethan stood behind the podium, wearing no tie, just an open-collared shirt and weary eyes. "She's not a gold digger," he said firmly. "She didn't come looking for money. I found her. I walked into her life uninvited, and what I saw was a mother raising 3 extraordinary girls with strength I'll never fully understand. She owes me nothing. I owe her everything." The video went viral within hours. Still, Jules didn't say a word when he returned. She simply looked at him and said, "Money can't buy back years." "I know," he replied. She turned to walk away. That's when the girls, quietly listening behind the kitchen door, rushed forward. "Are you going to leave us again?" Bella asked. Tremblingly, Ethan knelt down. "No," he whispered, voice cracking. "Never." "Even when we're messy?" Grace asked. "Especially then." Lila tugged on his sleeve. "Then, can we draw another picture?" He smiled through his tears. "Only if I'm in it." The beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound in the hospital room, soft and steady like a lullaby. The sterile white walls and the dim overhead light couldn't erase the warmth on the small couch beside Jules's bed. Ethan sat slumped against the cushions, one arm around Grace, who lay across his lap, and the other gently touching Bella's hair as she slept beside his leg. Lila, ever the quiet one, had found a spot tucked beneath his jacket, her tiny hand resting over his chest like it had every right to be there. He hadn't slept all night. Since rushing Jules to the ER 2 days ago, he hadn't left her side except to let the nurses work. She'd collapsed in the diner kitchen, pale and trembling, her knees buckling as she tried to lift a heavy crate of supplies. The girls had screamed, and Ethan had moved faster than he ever had in his life. Now, watching them wrapped around him like puzzle pieces that somehow fit, he understood what Jules had meant all along. This was a life that didn't need fixing, only honoring. He had no assistant here, no driver, no board meetings, just juice boxes, coloring books, and the sudden realization that love wasn't an event. It was presence. It was three little girls falling asleep beside a man they barely knew but already trusted with everything. When a soft rustle pulled his gaze, he saw Jules stirring. Her lashes fluttered against pale cheeks. She blinked slowly, her lips dry and cracked, voice barely a whisper. He leaned in gently, careful not to wake the girls. Her eyes scanned the room, then landed on her daughters. "Are they okay?" "Perfect," he murmured. "They were scared, but they're okay now." Jules closed her eyes again, relief loosening the tight lines around her face. "I didn't mean to scare them." "You didn't. You just gave too much of yourself, like you always do." He saw tears gather in the corners of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I didn't know how else to keep everything together." "You don't have to anymore," he said, more firmly than he expected. "You're not alone, Jules, not anymore." Her eyes searched his. "You said that once before, the night we met, remember?" He nodded, pain flickering through his chest. "I remember everything." She looked away. "Then you remember leaving, too." "I do," he said softly, "and I'll regret it every day for the rest of my life. But I'm not running this time." The room was still. Then, slowly, Jules reached for the bedside table, her fingers brushing the edge of a framed photo of the girls. Her hand trembled. "I raised them to know love, not to wait for someone who walked away." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You didn't just raise them, you gave them a world, one full of grace and strength and joy. I see it every time Bella rolls her eyes, or when Lila gets lost in thought, or when Grace tries to boss everyone around." Despite herself, Jules smiled. "Missed everything," Ethan said, voice raw. "Their first words, their first steps, their birthdays. And I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm begging for it anyway." He paused, then added, "Not just with them, with you." The door creaked as a nurse peeked in, then silently backed out at the sight of the sleeping children. Jules took a breath and looked toward the girls. They were tangled in limbs and soft snores, their bodies curved toward Ethan like magnets. "You didn't just miss 6 years," she whispered. "You missed the nights I cried when they had fevers, the panic when money ran out, the joy when they hugged me just because. You missed everything." Ethan nodded, his voice low. "And yet here they are, still open, still full of wonder, because you never let the world break them." Jules reached up and touched her temple, where a faint bruise still lingered from the fall. "You can't just show up, Ethan, and think everything will fall into place. That guilt will glue together what time tore apart." "No," he said. "That's why I'm stepping away. From the company." She blinked. "What?" "I told the board yesterday," he said. "I'm taking an extended leave. I can't run hotels for strangers while the people who matter most to me are right here." "You're stepping back from Westwood International?" she asked, stunned. "Which told them to figure it out," he said. "I've got finger paintings to hang and cookies to burn." She looked at him like he was someone she didn't recognize, and maybe, for the first time, she didn't need to. "5 seeds? I thought you'd choose your empire," she whispered. "Would really?" "I did. I'm right here, in this room." A soft knock came at the door, but no one stirred. Ethan gently reached over, grabbed a blanket from the foot of the bed, and covered the girls. Then he pulled the chair closer, resting his elbows on his knees, his voice low, steady. "I used to think success was about legacy," he said. "My father drilled that into me. Control the narrative, own the rooms, build a kingdom." Jules watched him closely. "It was all noise," Ethan continued. "Board meetings, interviews, press dinners. I sat in penthouses filled with silence, thinking I was fulfilled. And then I walked into your diner and saw 3 girls coloring on napkins, and my whole world shattered." Jules's fingers twitched beneath the hospital blanket. She turned to look at him, brows furrowed. "You think that fixes this?" she asked. "A few weeks of showing up?" He nodded slowly. "No, I don't. But I'm not here to fix what's already beautiful. I'm here to be part of it." She was quiet for a long beat, eyes drifting to the girls. Bella murmured in her sleep, rolling into Lila, who didn't stir. Grace let out a tiny snore, and Jules smiled faintly at the sound. I was angry for a long time, she admitted. At you, at the universe, at myself. You had every right to be angry. I tried to write to you, she said. At first every week, then every month, then just birthdays. I never knew if you even read them. Ethan swallowed hard. I never got them. My father, he intercepted everything. He told me you'd moved on, that you were using me. And I believed him because I was too cowardly to come back and find out. Jules closed her eyes, pain etched in her expression. He sent me to London to clean up a PR disaster, Ethan said bitterly. Said if I didn't, the board would crumble. I was just a puppet. Stayed gone. Until I had nothing left but empty power and cold bed sheets. Jules turned away, her voice tight. And now? Bayard curly rasp below it. I want bedtime stories, glitter on my ties, pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. She let out a sound between a laugh and a scoff. You don't know what you're asking for. Do, he said gently, and I'm not afraid of it. She looked at him then, really looked. For the first time in 6 years, the man sitting in front of her wasn't the mysterious boy from New York or the CEO from a headline. He was just Ethan, the father of her daughters, and maybe something more. Nope, not perfect, she said softly. I lose my temper, I cry in closets. Sometimes, I let them eat cereal for dinner. He leaned forward. Perfect would be boring. I want real. I want you. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. I don't know if I can forgive the past, she whispered. Logan walked slowly as he tried to say it. But maybe we can build something new. From now. A silence stretched between them, long, heavy. Then the girls stirred, their little bodies beginning to wiggle from sleep. Bella sat up first, rubbing her eyes, her voice groggy. Is Miney okay? Jules gave her a weak smile. I'm all right, sweetheart. Grace crawled up beside her, placing a small kiss on her arm. We were scared. I know, Jules whispered. I'm sorry. Lila, still snuggled into Ethan's coat, looked up at him. Did you stay the whole time? He nodded. Every second. Ella tilted her head. Even when you had work stuff? I told my work to wait, he said. You three come first. Jules glanced over, surprised by how easily the words came out of him now. Lila reached over and took Jules' hand, then Ethan's. Then, maybe you can stay a little longer? He swallowed hard, then nodded. As long as you'll let me. The girls beamed. For them, it was that simple. Jules watched, her heart full and aching all at once. Ethan looked over at her, eyes wet. Let me prove it, Jules, he said. Not with money, not with offers, with actions, with time. She let out a shaky breath. Then we take it slow. For them. He smiled, grateful, for all of us. And in that tiny hospital room, with 3 girls curled around them and wounds slowly mending in the quiet between confessions, a new beginning took its first breath. Not perfect, not easy, but real. The local park had never looked so alive. Colorful streamers fluttered between tree branches, laughter echoed from the inflatable slide, and the scent of popcorn and cotton candy danced on the warm breeze. Children dashed through the grass, painted faces beaming with joy. In the center of it all, Ethan knelt beside a makeshift booth with Grace perched on his shoulders and Bella tugging at his sleeve to hurry. Danny, the balloon lady's making a unicorn now. You promised you'd see it? He grinned. All right, lead the way, princess. Jules watched them from a distance, standing beneath a tree, arms folded loosely as she tried to quiet the storm of emotions rising in her chest. Ethan had planned everything. The fair games, the ice cream truck, the tiny handmade crowns the girls wore in glittery pink. He didn't call it a date, he called it our day. She'd expected chaos. Instead, it was perfect. The girls ran free, their laughter so loud it made her heart squeeze. And Ethan, he wasn't just present, he was all in, painting butterflies on cheeks, chasing Bella through the hay maze, holding Lila's hand when she got nervous on the pony ride. He even let Grace draw a cat, whisker mustache on his. "My!" Bella yelled across the grass. "Come see Daddy's face." Jules smiled and waved, her heart warming as Ethan winked at her from beneath a pair of ridiculous paper cat ears. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden haze over the park, Ethan rounded the girls together for one last surprise. He led them to a picnic blanket beneath the oldest oak, where he'd placed a small pink box decorated in stickers and crayon swirls. "All right," he said, kneeling before them. "We worked hard on this. You remember what we practiced?" Grace nodded solemnly. Bella bounced with excitement. Lila held the box carefully in both hands. Ethan took a breath, then turned to Jules, who had walked over, curiosity on her face. "Gallies," he began, voice steady but soft, "this isn't about fixing the past or making up for lost time. This is about what we are now, who we've become." Jules stared at him, her chest tightening. He glanced at the girls. "We talked a lot, the four of us, and they helped me prepare something very important." Lila stepped forward, holding out the pink box. Jules hesitated, then took it gently and opened the lid. Inside, on a soft bed of tissue paper, was a folded note in crayon. 3 messy, unmistakable signatures. And above them, a single sentence written in big, colorful letters. "Will you marry us?" Jules's hand trembled as she lifted the note from the box. Her eyes scanned the crayon letters, the heart drawn around each word, the sticky stars Grace had probably insisted on. A lump formed in her throat. She looked down at Ethan, who had dropped to one knee, not with diamonds or velvet, but with love written in crayon. "I wanted to do this right," he said, his voice thick, "but nothing felt real enough. Not the ring, not the setting, until I saw them make this, and realized this was the only proposal that ever mattered." The girls gathered close, crowding around Jules's legs. Me," Lila said, tugging on her dress. "Will you be our forever too?" "We already picked where the wedding should be," Grace added quickly. "The diner?" "I can be the flower girl," Bella announced proudly. "Because I'm the loudest." Jules let out a shaky laugh, her vision blurring through tears. She knelt down slowly, hugging all 3 girls at once, their little arms wrapped around her neck, warm and trembling. She looked up at Ethan, who hadn't moved, his eyes locked on hers, searching. "I don't have the right words," she whispered. "There were so many nights I wished you were here, and then so many I swore I'd never forgive you." "I know," he whispered back. "But I'm not leaving, not again." Jules let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in her chest for 6 years. She reached for Ethan's hand, pulling him up from the grass, then cupped his cheek with her other hand. "Yes," she whispered, tears rolling freely now. "Yes, we'll marry you." The girls screamed. Bella spun in circles, shouting, "We're getting married!" Lila burst into giggles, hugging Ethan's leg. Grace looked up and asked, "Can we get a puppy too now?" Ethan laughed, breathless with emotion, and pulled them all into one big, messy group hug. Strangers walking past clapped without even knowing why. A dog barked, a balloon popped nearby, and none of it mattered, because under that oak tree, with cotton candy in their hair and crayon-written promises in their hands, a family was finally whole. No headlines, no lawyers, no corporate press releases. Us love, simple and wild, in a park filled with laughter. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fire and rose, Jules leaned into Ethan's arms and whispered, "Forever starts today." 1 year later, the mansion no longer echoed with silence. It sang with the sounds of tiny feet running down polished halls, of laughter bouncing off marble walls, and the occasional crash of toys toppling over in rooms that used to house antiques. The once cold estate was now drenched in color. Crayon drawings were pinned on the fridge next to grocery lists and silly reminders like, "Don't forget Lila's recital," and "Bella ate glue again." In the center of it all stood Jules Snowa, Mrs. Westwood, with a spatula in one hand and a streak of flour across her cheek. The scent of cinnamon rolls filled the kitchen. Grace sat on the counter licking batter from a spoon, while Bella tried to sneak another one past her mom. Down, cupcake thief, Jules said with a smirk, nudging Bella with her elbow. You said cupcakes were for celebrating, Bella insisted. Your dad's nonprofit launched 3 months ago. We've celebrated with cake 6 times. Because he's saving parents, Mommy, Lila said, entering with her stuffed bunny. That means cupcakes forever. Jules rolled her eyes lovingly. Ethan's foundation, Second Starts, had already helped dozens of single parents with housing, job training, and legal support. He said he created it for people like Jules, who fought quietly, loved loudly, and carried more than anyone ever saw. Outside, Ethan walked up the front steps, phone in one hand, the other holding a bouquet of daisies and sunflowers. He opened the door just in time to be bombarded by 3 tiny forces of nature. Daddy's back, Bella shrieked. Tickle attack, Grace cried. Ethan dropped the bouquet and scooped them all into a hug, pretending to fall over with the weight of them. You're early, Jules said, walking out with a towel over her shoulder. Be guilty, he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Board meeting ended early. I bribed the assistant with chocolate. Jules smiled. You're a terrible influence. You married me. Only because of the s'mores, she teased. He grinned. Speaking of which, I have plans for tonight. That evening, they gathered under the stars on the stone patio behind the house. A small fire crackled in the fire pit. The girls huddled in blankets, roasting marshmallows while telling scary stories that weren't scary at all. Jules watched Ethan help Lila with her marshmallow, his hair mussed from the wind, his sweater sleeves pushed up. He looked relaxed, happy, human. She leaned back in her chair, cocoa in hand, a sleepy smile tugging at her lips. Bella sat curled up beside her mother, holding a folded piece of notebook paper in her hands. Want to hear what I wrote for school? She asked. Jules nodded. Of course, baby. Bella unfolded the paper and cleared her throat dramatically. How I Met My Dad, by Bella Westwood. Ethan turned, interested. Oh boy, she giggled. My dad used to be invisible. I didn't know he was real, but then one day, he showed up and had the same eyes as me. At first I was mad. Then he made pancakes and did the voices in bedtime stories and let me draw on his suit. Now, he's the best dad ever. The end. Everyone clapped, especially Ethan, who wiped at his eyes discreetly. 10 out of 10, he said hoarsely. Might win a Pulitzer. Bella grinned and handed him the paper. You can keep it. He folded it carefully and tucked it into his shirt pocket, tapping it over his heart. Later that night, as the fire died down and the girls yawned their way inside, promises of brushing their teeth, though Bella was likely lying, Jules and Ethan remained behind. The stars glittered overhead, the air cool but not cold. Ethan looked at her, then reached for her hand. I never imagined joy could look like this, he whispered. Jules leaned into him. Neither did I. You know, I used to think love was measured in grand gestures, private jets, diamond deals. He kissed her temple. Now I know it's measured in bedtime kisses and glue stick art and the sound of 3 giggles echoing down the hallway. Jules rested her head on his shoulder. We built this, Ethan, not in one night, but brick by brick, diaper by diaper, tantrum by tantrum. She laughed softly. Still worth it. They sat in silence for a while, watching the embers glow. Behind them, the house was filled with warmth, light spilling from windows, the soft rustle of slippers, and the promise of stories still being written. Ethan turned to her one last time. Thank you for forgiving me. She looked into his eyes and whispered, Thank you for becoming who they needed. He nodded, pressing her hand to his lips. Forever? Forever, she said. And as the last ember faded and the stars burned brighter, their home stood quietly, strong, and full of love. A place where wounds had healed, laughter reigned, and a once broken family was whole again.